Does it matter which way an arrowhead is attached to the arrow, vertical or horizontal? In 1882, Colonel Richard Irving Dodge published a statement that has been carried on for more than a century, but may have been just a misunderstanding. He wrote in the book, Our Wild Indians, 33 years personal experience among the red men of the Great West. The Comanches place the blade of the hunting arrow in the same plane with the notch for the string, so that it may more surely pass between the ribs of the animal, which are up and down. For the same reason, the blade of the war arrow is perpendicular to the notch, the ribs of the human enemy being horizontal. And just a reminder, the main tribe in the 1988 novel Dances with Wolves was the Comanches, though they were changed to the Lakota Sioux for the film. Just 10 years after the first book, in 1893, Dr. Otis Tufton Mason wrote in his book, North American Bows, Arrows, and Quivers, "It is often said by frontiersmen that the Plains Indians had two ways of mounting an arrowhead with relation to the notch at the nock. If the plane of the arrowhead be horizontal when the arrow is in position for shooting, that is, at right angles to the notch, the missile is a war arrow, to go between the ribs of men. But if the plane of the head be vertical when the bow is drawn, the missile is a hunting arrow, for passing between the ribs of a buffalo and other mammals." Captain John G. Burke thinks this is a mistake. He says, "I have seen all kinds in the same quiver." The 1996 book, War Before Civilization, mentions the differences between hunting and war arrows without going into specifics. Missile weapons were all clearly derived from those used in hunting. Those employed in war were often exactly the same as those used in the chase, although some models for warfare were deadlier than the corresponding hunting versions. The 2001 book Weapons in Warfare starts off with a contradiction, but then goes on to paraphrase the original words of Colonel Dodge. Arrowheads took many forms, even in the early periods of bow and arrow usage. Some reports claim that there was essentially no difference between hunting and war arrows, except the arrowheads on the war arrow were longer for more effective penetration. Hunting arrowheads were parallel to the string, so that they would pass through the ribs of game. The arrowheads of war arrows were perpendicular to the bowstring, so that the arrows would easily pass between the ribs of the human enemy. The bow and arrow was a very effective weapon of war for Native Americans. In the final example, the 2009 book Warfare, Economy, and Technology puts his own wording on the old idea. Generally, there are two types of arrow, hunting arrows and war arrows. Buffalo and deer move on four legs, so their ribs are vertical. Native Americans fashioned their hunting arrows so that their tips would fly through the air vertically, slipping easily between an animal's ribs to strike its vital organs. War arrows were designed to fly with their tips horizontal, so that they passed easily between human ribs. The only convincing dissenting voice I found on this issue was published in 1980, which is decades before the last two books we quoted. As a rule, there was no difference in the shape of war or hunting points when made of metal, although occasional examples of barbed metal war arrowheads have been noted. There are stories that war points were set on the arrows so as to be perpendicular to the bowstring. The idea was that the arrowhead would then enter a man's ribs more easily. Conversely, hunting points were set in the same line as the string to enter an animal's rib cage more easily. If the Indians ever had such ideas, they were impractical, because any arrow, no matter how it is fletched, will spin while traveling, and no one can predict at what angle it will arrive in its targets. And there's the counter-argument. Arrows spin in flight, so arrowhead alignment on the arrow shaft does not matter. One modern bow hunter I know personally thought it was funny when I asked if arrows spin, and didn't think horizontal or vertical arrowheads made any difference. What do you think? Does it make sense to align an arrowhead on the shaft to pass between the target's ribs? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Please like this video and see links in the description below to watch Dances with Wolves and read the novel.